So this one, maybe it first is a little hard to understand. It's an invention by some researchers at Caltech, and it has to do with blood pressure monitoring. And we're all familiar with that. I have a blood pressure machine down here. Um, well, it's not quite accessible, but I check my blood pressure a few times a week. And we all know how doctors do it. They put the big thing around your arm. The home ones, sometimes it's around your wrist. But essentially, what they all have in common is they take two measurements in blood pressure. Measurements is when the blood pumps out, it raises the blood pressure in the blood vessels to a maximum amount. And then when the heart relaxes, right, and takes in, has incoming blood, oxygenated blood coming from the lungs, everything relaxes. So there's a big number and a small number. Like you get 120/80 is known as the ideal blood pressure. So 120 is the pressure when the blood pumps out, and 80 is when it relaxes. Well, especially when someone's having a medical problem, what happens between those two measurements is important. And they call that the waveform. And sometimes when you're in the hospital where blood pressure is a serious issue, they have to like internally put a line in to measure that whole waveform and what happens throughout the body in a lot more detail. And often that's critical to get that information that you just can't get from that traditional method of getting the high and low. And also they put it in line and it's continuous. Well, Caltech has developed a device that can do this non-invasively, like a blood pressure cuff. The prototype that you see here is there's a wristwatch version here, and then there's a cuff version where the mechanism is about the size of a deck of cards. And these two things, they work together. They're separate, but they work together. And those are prototypes, and what they expect to have happen is that the upper one will actually probably change to just a patch, and the lower one will be just like your regular watch, or maybe incorporated eventually into things like the Apple Watch, which will enable you and I to have this continuous blood pressure monitoring. And we're getting more and more to the point in modern medicine where we have things like continuous blood sugar monitoring. Now we're talking about continuous blood pressure monitoring. And also we have even watches that monitor and look for heart rhythms, like will detect bradycardia, which is a slow rhythm, tachycardia, fast rhythm. Those are the easy ones. And atrial fibrillation, which is a little bit more difficult to detect. And eventually we'll get to really advanced stuff where they can detect immediately the signs of a heart attack happening. So if you have in the far future, meaning maybe 5 years, you have like a patch, maybe a couple patches that are very not noticeable, a watch. You have all these things monitored before something bad happens, like a heart attack or a stroke, things of that nature. You're alerted and you get help when you need it, and it could really be a pretty significant thing. So this is really, really cool stuff that it's a great idea to pay attention to, and I find it pretty exciting. Hope you don't find it boring, but I think it's exciting, and it's definitely fits the category of positive news.